So this is my Dummies guide to setting up the MinimOSD. Why use MinimOSD? Well, they're $10 or less. They work with pretty much every multi-Wii style flight controller, CC3D, Naze, pretty much everything. And it gives you heads-up display in your goggles of your voltage. You can set up your RSSI. You can put GPS. You can do anything you want to show up in there. Really, it's very customizable, and it's cool. You know, you hand someone those goggles and they see the artificial horizon, and it's cool. It gives you a point of reference. It really gives you the rest of the picture. So, and a lot of people don't realize you have this functionality with these flight controllers. Super simple, and it really is an awesome setup. This is a Hobby King MinimOSD version 1.1. Okay, I will show you the comparative difference between this one and the White Spy shortly, but for functionality, they're both the same. Okay, so first off, there's an input digital side and an output analog side. The analog side is your video signal. Got video in, video out. You have 12 volts, and you have ground. Now, I run mine with the KV mod, which means we bridge these solder connections here and here, so that this whole board is powered off of 5 volts. Now, the reason we do this is so that when you're flashing the board, you only have to apply the 5 volts. You don't have to worry about putting 12 volts. If you do not have these soldered, you will have to apply 12 volts. Got the board off here. I'm going to just show you how to quickly solder this. Now, soldering's not difficult. If you haven't learned, you just got to practice. Okay, I'm just taking a little bit of flux, dabbing it between the two pads to help out. And I'll do it on the back side as well. You know, I've already soldered and desoldered this board before, so it's really not a big deal. Takes 2 seconds. Clean, hot soldering iron. Just touch the pads. That's done. See? Little bubble. And this one. Now, this is a fairly large soldering tip. You don't really need a super fine soldering tip for the majority of the stuff you do. That one's soldered as well. Okay, that's it. Took 2 seconds. That one's soldered. That one's soldered here and here. So if you get the White Spy one, the Ready to Fly Quads one, this is already done. I'll show you a comparison on. Alright, so I'm going to show you some of the differences in the Hobby King version of the MinimOSD, and this is the White Spy version. Okay, if you look at this side by side, they're pretty much the same, with the exception that the White Spy one has you can address individual inputs on the side of the board. Whereas with this Hobby King one, like if you want to do an external analog RSSI or voltage, you have to solder it to the individual pins on the chip. Those itty bitty pins, which, you know, it's not super difficult, but it's just a pain in the butt. On this one, this is my larger rig, the gimbal and stuff. So what I do is I do have a full Flip 32 Plus with the barometer, the MinimOSD. I have a GPS on this as well. GPS provides me with satellite data, so speed, altitude, things like that, other than the barometer. Voltage detection. I really get the full OSD experience with it, and I mean, this thing's like 20 bucks on Ready to Fly Quads. You can use just about any standalone GPS mod to plug into your Naze. The Naze is a pretty powerful little board for what it is and how cheap it is, so highly recommend. If you're gonna run something bigger, hell, you could fit this thing anywhere in a mini quad, and it weighs next to nothing. So Okay, so once you plug in the minimum OSD to the FTDI breakout board, boom boom. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to screen recording and we'll go from here. Now we're going to need to open the file. So in here I have under my KV team OSD. Go into here, open it up. So now that I've got that, go into my sketch tools, make sure all my ports are right. Boom, boom, boom. And that's pretty much it. You would just hit upload at this point, and it would write your files to the MinimOSD. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to rewrite what I've got. So anyway, you would just hit upload. It would say its thing, and that's that. All right, so now let's assume that you've got that part done. Now you're going to want to go into your, in this case, I'm going into the KV team OSD. So I'm going to, this is the MinimOSD. What you're going to do here is you're going to open up your COM. In this case, I'm hooked up to COM. So it sees all my settings. The first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to upload your fonts. Your fonts are loaded in the source directory. I'm going to change mine to big fonts. Let's see what happens. Okay, so now we're going to have to upload them. This takes a while. You can see it's transmitting. Goes up to 256. So while it's doing that, there's a few different settings you can choose in here. Since we're not running GPS, we're not running amperage, we're not running pretty much anything except RSSI and voltage in my case. There's only a few settings we need to mess with, so I turn the other stuff off. So now our board has been uploaded with the current font. Fonts, there's a bunch of different things you can do, but let's just keep it simple for now. So anyway, your board type, you can choose which one you want. In this case, it's a MinimOSD. Your RSSI, we're going to be doing on the multi-wii input. On PWN, we're actually on a PWN channel. PWM divider, RSSI mini and max. It's going to, based on the voltage that comes in, you can set this up. So volume, flight warnings, distance map, we're not even set up on this because it's not GPS. So I turn the GPS off, coordinates off, heading. So your voltage, you want it to read from your multi-wii, minimum voltage warning, battery cells, divider ratios. Then your video voltage, I don't even use that, but anyway, so over here, your unit in video, I set it to imperial. You can put it on metric if you want, NTSC, if you're in America. So now, here's another one, is your functions, is your maintain or reset your stats. What this does is, when you arm your model, it will reset your previous flight stats. This way, when you flip the switch, to arm your unit or arm your unit, the OSD resets to a clean flight. Then once you disarm it, it shows you your stats for that flight. Voltages, distance, I mean, it's a little bit of a logging setup. So that's cool and all, but we don't really need it for our use if you're going to be racing little quads. But so anyway, I just have it set to reset. I'm going to change my pitch angle here because I don't really care. There you go. vertical speed warning. I don't care. Anyway, let's see what happens. So amperage, once again, I don't have it set up. So what you're going to do is once you're done with that, you're going to go ahead and go down here and click write. Now all of your stuff is saved to the multi-Wii. So if you look on here, you can do a simulator. I don't have it hooked up to the thing, but it's pretty cool. So if I want to read what's on my board, make sure everything's on there, hit read. All my settings should stay the same. That's really it. So now we'll plug it in and see what it looks like. Okay, so now we've flashed our board and programmed our board. All that's left now is plugging it. And boom. So my cat, bless you, is taking my workbench seat. So here, let me. Okay, so here on the flight controller, this is a straight Naze 32, the Acro version. There's 2 pins on a regular Naze, transmit and receive, or receive and transmit. All you gotta do is, I have green set up to as receive on here. So receive goes to here. It's set up to transmit on the board. Then you can hook up transmit to receive on the board. And then I have a ground wire going back to the Naze. And I skipped over the 5 volts. Apply your 5 volts right here. Boom. Now I have my 5 volts going into the, I guess it's the middle rail. So it's the middle pin on the Naze board. Top is your signal pins, and the bottom pins are your ground pins. You could plug it into a BEC. You could do it pretty much to anything. You don't even have to solder these, but I recommend that you do bridge with gaps. I've had issues every time I leave these soldered, or I don't have these soldered, and I just run it off of 5 volts. So now another important thing to look at is when you are powering this, this goes to my camera, okay? You'll notice here, I put a power lead. In this case, I just dropped it down to my receiver. That means that I'm pulling, this is a GoPro camera lead, so I can run a power my GoPro off of it. So this little guy goes down and plugs into my receiver because I know that's got 5 volts. And then the ground goes back to here, whereas the signal comes onto here. And so if you're looking at this, let's see, ground, video in is on the rear pin, ground's on there. So video in is this one, so this bottom pin over here. And then video out will go from here to my transmitter. So here is my transmitter. In this case, my transmitter would plug in to here. So I do have this hooked up at the moment, but when I plug this in, it would only have ground and power. So it's pretty easy. Next, I'm going to show you how to solder it, go through the configuration, and the final step is once you've got this in and it's in the unit, there's some things you need to configure in the Naze board. I'm going to tackle that, and also the OSD configuration. There's an on-screen display on the on-screen display that when you start it up, it allows you to see and position it with this firmware, with the KV Team firmware. You can actually use your remote to move and position the different things around and adjust your settings, whereas on the multi-Wii the other multi-Wii firmwares, you do it completely in the configurator on your computer. I don't really care either way. I just kind of set it up and let it be. I'm not too picky about it. But there's a bunch of information out there on the KV Team Mod website about setting up your on-screen display. I don't have a way to transmit video so that you can see it. This is out, so I'm going to direct you to setting it up on the KV Team Mod. But if you set it up the way I showed you on here, whether it's this board or the pretty much identical White Spy board, you can go ahead and plug it in and it'll work. So just walk through the steps I'm about to show you, hook it up, Just make sure the only thing you really got to worry about is where you're plugging your power into. Anything else, you really can't hurt anything. Just make sure you're always conscious where your power leads are going. After this, you will be able to see an on-screen display.